Okay, we're back again. The subject of my lecture series is investigating mind, cultivating wisdom, and harvesting compassion. And as I've been practicing and studying for this lecture, in fact, that's what seems to come up and resonate in mind in my preparation. And you'll find that these themes come about of investigating mind and cultivating wisdom, to know how to cultivate wisdom, and from that the wisdom that becomes apparent, excuse me, the compassion that comes apparent from this type of a practice. The hardest part of making a Dharma presentation is trying to say something that is meaningful but not contradictory to the Dharma itself, and knowing that the Dharma itself is illusory. It becomes something of a great responsibility to the presenter. And if the presenter is not up to the task, then they can lead people astray quite easily. And I'll try to demonstrate that tonight. Not that I'm going to lead you away, but using some stories. And it's the job of having right view, that is, at understanding how mind works. So you are here to listen to the ways of how to practice to investigate mind. I cannot talk to you and tell you what mind is. That would be useless for me to try to do it in some way and try to describe something that cannot be found in words. But therein lies the difficulty in terms of somebody who's a presenter of the Dharma, is how to make something meaningful, not only meaningful, but to try to cut to the issue, cut right to what the Master Ling Chi said, the shortcut to the practice. And when you go to the shortcut, then it makes your practice much easier and more productive in terms of the way. When we do not use the shortcut, then we are lost, because we're trying to perfect this body and perfect what we perceive to be the mind within the body to some form of enlightenment. The shortcut that all the masters have said is just this mind. Just this mind is the Buddha mind. This is what we talked about last week, ekayana. Ekayana is just one mind. It was what was passed on from Bodhidharma to Weka and continuing through all the six patriarchs and continuing on with their disciples. Just this mind. And this is the part about investigating, and it's something that I would like you on your own time to try to contemplate what is mind, not consciousness, but what is mind? What does mind entail? This is something that's very, very important, because when we don't do it in the correct way, we perceive through the five skandha that this body houses the mind. And as a result, we look at it and we think that it is it here, but we don't perceive the idea of what present moment is. All of these things, what I'm trying to do is lay out for you in a way in which it is very honest presentation, to let you know I don't come here to pontificate and to lay out things of ancient words of the masters as if those words are the great jewels. They are to a certain extent, as long as we understand the limitation of those words. It is the presenter that carries the heavy weight to feel what words to use in any particular moment, just in this moment, not in 5 minutes before the lecture, but in this moment, what needs to be said, to try to gather you all up and to try to collectively bring you, and try even the stragglers, to bring them and offer them something that is of a benefit to them, so that they can practice properly in the right view, understanding that we don't practice our consciousness. We understand that in this environment, in samsara, in this world, we should be good people. We should be good to each other. We should be compassionate. We should use worldly wisdom. But we have to have this wisdom beyond wisdom, this realization of mind. It is not something that can be brought to you in a box and opened up and given to you, or anoint you with it. The only thing that I can do is encourage you to do this and understand how to use the Dharma, how to use the sutras, how to use the treatises of the masters, where to dig. This is very, very important. Please understand this, so that you listen sincerely about what I'm going to say. This is not just another lecture. It is not something that I often point to and say, it's not a PowerPoint presentation. You see already, I'm very low tech in terms of PowerPoint. It is not something that I read off to you what is on the page. It is something very spontaneous. And there is actually 2 channels that are running, one of the spoken word, and the other one is an unspoken word that is the mind's own heart that is running. We call this the esoteric. And the esoteric is something that cannot be explained in words, but it's there. And if you attune to that, that is what they talk about, mind-to-mind transmission. It is something that you can communicate without speaking. It is already known. It is there. It is timeless. But all of those definitions that I'm using, if you cling to those words, then they will be of no use to you. So it's something that I'm expressing as an exhortation and also a cautionary tale that we have to practice sincerely. Some of you have the benefit of listening to many, many masters speaking about the Dharma. Just like Ling Chi said, do not put those old fellows on a pedestal. He said, and think, oh, they're so great and they're so wonderful and whatever they speak is great. And I am not capable of reaching that level. He said, all of you are capable of reaching that level. If I can do it, you certainly can do it. And the only difference is, what did I do? I did it. I worked on it. I followed what the masters were saying, when I read what they were saying, or I heard Master Sheng talk, and using that kind of a way, then I went to look for myself to try to do that. There was a story about an alchemist that could change anything to gold. And so people would come to see him and they would say, can you turn this pot to gold for me? And he would take it and he would use his methods and change it to gold, and they'd be happy and leave. One day he heard a knock on the door and he opened it. He couldn't see anybody. Then he looked down and he saw this little young man. And the boy, he was there just standing there with holding his hands in front of him. And the master looked at him and said, "What do you want? You want me to change something into gold?" And the little boy just shook his head. And he said, "Well, what do you want then?" And the little boy said, "I want to know how you do it." You see the difference? You see, you have to have this mind of investigation. You want to know how to do it. Okay? It's not that you go and you see all these masters and they're there and you give them respect and you're great and so wonderful. I only wish I could be like you. Why not be like them? Find out how they did it. Listen. If they're true and well-known advisors, they will tell you exactly how they did it. They have nothing to hide with that. Before I practiced in Buddha Dharma, I practiced Qigong and I became very good at the Qigong. And contrary to other people, anything that I knew, I would show to other people. I'd show them how to do it. I thought, why not? Why should I hide anything? Why should it be so secret? I would just show them. The only people I wouldn't show was somebody that I felt would use it for bad purposes. But it is this way that we do this, and we open up the practice to that. Now, some people who are just beginning in presenting as instructors or have not yet had a profound realization or awakening, then they have to move a lot slower because they have not yet understood that. But those who have some experience, then they should not hold back anything. They should freely give, and as often as they can, the Dharma, the correct Dharma. The correct Dharma is how to investigate mind, how to cultivate wisdom. The compassion will come from there. So this is how we do it. So I wanted to start off first with back to Master Huineng. And in this particular passage of Master Huineng, it's one that is commonly used. But I wanted to give you something that is points directly to mind, and then show you, do you get it or don't you get it? Okay. So it says, one day Huineng thought, the time has come to spread the Dharma. I cannot stay in hiding forever. So accordingly, he went to Sheng Monastery, and Dharma Master Ying Sang was giving lectures on the Nirvana Sutra. At that time, there were two bhikshus, so two monks, who were discussing the topic of the wind and the flag. So how many of you have heard this story before? Raise your hand. About the wind and the flag. Almost all of you, right? You've all heard this story. Okay. And so it says, one said, the wind is moving, and the other said, the flag is moving. They argued incessantly, and Huineng stepped forward and said, now at this time, Huineng was not a monastic. He had not been ordained yet. Remember, because he took off with the robe and the bowl and never received ordination from his master. And so he's just coming up as a common folk and listening to these monks talking. And so he says to them, the wind is not moving, nor is the flag moving. Your minds, kind sir, are moving. And then everybody was startled, like, what? So it's a cool story, right? What does it mean? I mean, really, what does it mean? Because we always say, aha, aha. He said their minds are moving. Moving what? Is that good or is that bad? I mean, let's get to it now. Let's do some work. Let's not just read words and recite funny stories. Let's go into it. Is this good or bad that their minds are moving? Is it unnatural or natural? Anybody want to weigh in? Come on, Singapore.
Okay, I'll try. Take skin a bit. Okay, neither good nor bad, because the mind's moving is quite natural. It's our discriminating mind that we attach on. Then we make such a lot of discrimination, and then a lot of argument or maybe attachment to one another. So what Hui Nen say is okay, is our discriminating mind that's making all the, maybe the wind is moving or the flag is moving, but our mind, the one that's aware, is not moving. Can I say that?
I caught you. I caught you. Is that you? Is that you? You're a discriminating mind? And then what do you have as another mind? And how do you explain one of the masters that said, it is not the water beneath the bridge that is moving, it's the bridge that's moving. What does that mean? Don't think. Feel it. It's not the water moving, it's the bridge that's moving. When we get caught up in these conceptions, it's easy to respond to these in a very academic way. I'm doing this for your benefit. I'm doing this to correct you now so that you can move forward. Do not get caught up on concepts. Do not say it's so easy to do it this way. This reflects cogitation, but it does not reflect contemplation. This is what we're teaching, or I should say unteaching, literally unteaching, and we'll get into that in a moment. But it is something, when we look at it, we say, is it good or bad? Didn't Hui Ning last week say, if you go beyond what is profane and sacred, what mind is that? Just this mind. So Hui Ning was not being critical of them. He was simply explaining that the mind is moving. It's dynamic. It's not a negative. It is an affirmative statement of the dynamics of mind itself. If one attaches this or attaches that, things will move, will be set into motion. No, we have the opportunity to change that in whichever way we want. That is a secret. Why? Because everything belongs to mind. To know all the Buddhas of the past, present, and future, perceive that all Dharma, Dharu nature, all phenomena is created by the mind. It's all created by the mind. There is no discriminatory consciousness, anything. All of those things, including self, they're created by the mind. So we go right directly to the shortcut, right directly there to see what's there, how to practice in the proper way. Then we're doing mind work. We're contemplating mind. So when we look at it, then we look at it with seriousness. So we don't just attach to the first understanding. This first understanding, 99.9% of the people will say that. But I'm interested in bringing all those 99.9% of the people to realize there is more to it than that. And this understanding that's there. And we have to feel that so that we're clear about it. If we can do that, then then we're making some progress. That's why I said I was going to show you how we get caught up in these kinds of concepts, and then we're off, because if we hold on to that kind of a theory, then we are far from it. We just simply have to use the shortcut. First, think first, mind. And the answer will come clearly to you. It takes thinking, cogitation, to come up with an academic answer. Okay, we'll continue. Okay. And by the way, today we went beyond the ABCs, okay? We're going to go, I'm going to take you guys deep but hang in there. Even if you're beginners, hang in there. It's even better if you're beginners, because you don't have any preconceptions as to what you think. So just flow with me, stay with me. I promise I'm not going to leave you behind. Just hang in there, pay attention, and feel with your heart. Okay. This part just is a little bit tricky. It's a little bit long, so you're gonna have to listen to it. And this is Matsu, and when it talks about the national teacher, they're referring to Matsu here, which was one of the famous Chan teachers, and it says. So he's questioning a monk and saying, are there many teachers where you came from? Because this monk came from the south, and he says, are there many teachers over there? And the monk says, oh yes, there's many, many teachers there. Now remember, because he's saying they're coming from the south. So politically in the Chan school, there was the northern school and the southern school. And so they're looking at these from the southern school and saying, okay, well, what are they teaching there? And so then he says, in that place, were these directly impart teaching mind is Buddha to their students. Okay. And then he continues on. So this is the one saying what they're teaching in the South. He says, right now, you completely possess the nature of conscious perception. This benevolent nature can cause the rising of an eyebrow or a twinkling in the eye. It is employed when coming and going and pervades the body. So he's saying there's this consciousness in the body, and it can express surprise or disgust or whatever. It's there. And this is this conscious perception. And he said, if you tap your head, the head knows it. If you stamp your feet, the feet know it. The ancients called it pervasive consciousness. I mean, it can feel everything around it. Okay. Aside from this, there is no other Buddha. This body is subject to birth and death and annihilation. So this body will not last. Okay. But the nature of the mind is beginningless and does not undergo birth and death. So the nature of the mind, it had no beginning. It's there. The body subject to birth and death is like a dragon that loses and regrows its bones, or the snake that sheds its skin, or a human that leaves an old home. This body impermanent, but the body is impermanent, but its nature is eternal. So what do you think? Do you think that this is a good Dharma? What he's saying, the principles and stuff, are they consistent with Buddha Dharma? The things he was saying, that the body is impermanent, but the nature is eternal, and there's this pervasive consciousness, and it's just like you lose the body, but you pick up a body. Shifu used to say, it's not bad, don't be afraid of death, because if you die, you just get a new body. It's like getting a new car when your car dies. Not bad, a good deal. So what do you think? Is this good Dharma? Anybody want to weigh in?
No way.
Nobody.
It seems
Go
to
ahead.
suggest a form of permanence of the eternal soul, of a permanent consciousness that goes on life after life, which seems to be in contradiction with the general teaching of impermanence in Buddha Dharma.
Yeah. And the thing is, but do you see how easy it is to kind of be lulled into thinking that this is correct?
Yes.
So it's so easy to say, oh, well, it's permanent, so that's it. And so there's this idea of this never-ending entity or soul. This is very important for today's lecture. You have to hang in there with me on that. So okay, I will give you 10 points for that one. So not bad. And so something here is what the masters would say. Something's missing. Something's not quite correct. And even though it sounds good, something's still missing. Something isn't as the way it should be. So then it said, the national teacher criticized us, saying, if that's so, then the teaching is no different than the heretical Seneca doctrine. The teachers of that doctrine said, within this body is a spirit, although the spirit cannot know the body's affliction. When the body expires, the spirit departs from it. If I am burned up, the spiritual host moves on. So I am not eternal. This host is eternal. You see how it almost sounds right. It almost sounds right. But the flaw in it, and by the way, the word, bringing up my PowerPoint, is Seneca. Okay. So Seneca is this idea, just like Lo Wei was saying, and he said it precisely, that there's kind of an idea of a perpetuation of a soul or a life in being. Remember what we said last week about Anatman? Do you remember what that meant? Anybody know?
Not self.
Not self. So it didn't mean no self. It meant not self. So this is correct here in terms of this. And then we'll go to that and in some other quotes or questions that were presented to the Buddha to clarify this. Because today what I really want to work on is getting this idea of what the practice is, what is mind and what mind is not. And you're going to see this as we go through this. And I'm going to be taking you through some more high-level treatises and scholarly papers to show you that, and then take it all the way back to the ancient Chan masters, and you see it's all fits in. So this is what is important here. And he says, with such an understanding, true and false cannot be distinguished. So with such an understanding, if you're holding on to this idea, then you cannot see true and false. And that's what the ancient masters said, that if you want to practice, you must have a true and proper understanding. What is a true and proper understanding? Just this mind. Just this mind is the Buddha mind. So then we get to the very next part, and he says, a monk asked Matsu, what is Buddha? And he said, the mind is Buddha. A monk asked, does the mind have defilements? What do you think? Does the mind have defilements? Is there things that are there? Sim Liang was saying that there was discriminations in the mind. So does the mind have defilements?
Illusory. It's not that originally.
So you have your one chance that Matsu is asking you a question directly. And that would be what you'd say to him. That's why what do you think that in the ancient texts, they're always saying to the people, they tell them a question, they say, speak. And then the people they cannot speak, you know. And so I did that once in a retreat where there was a senior student there, and we were doing the walking meditation, and I yelled stop after running, and I came up to him with the incense board and said to him, "What is the question?" And he was very shocked, and I said, "Speak." And then he started to mumble something. I said, "Too late," and I walked away. So he blew his chance. So that would be your, okay, I'll give you one more chance later on to see if you can do better than that, okay? But the thing is that it, after the retreat, I think I mentioned this before, I was saying, what is the question is not the question, it's the answer. What is the question that you should be asking? What is mine? What is mine? So Matsu said, defilements by their own nature drop off. Very interesting. So do defilements have a nature of their own? I'm going to catch Michael. I'll give him something because I don't know what time it is over there where he's at, but it's got to be late.
No, defilements are of illusionary nature. So they are appearances in mind. They come and go.
So if they're illusory, do they have an illusory nature?
They are not independent of mind, but they have this time dimension attached to them. They are impermanent.
You just couldn't let the quantum physicists go, could you? You were good up to that point, but poof. So you got 10 points minus 5 points for your last one, but that's all right. It's okay because, you know, I want people to be very relaxed to be able to answer questions and don't think, oh gosh, I hope he doesn't call on me. You know, I'm going to blank my screen or I'm going to hide or make myself small or whatever. It is something that is, you're fortunate to ask a question and to know a question to ask. And you're fortunate when a well-known advisor answers you, you're that much closer to a realization. So when he says defilements by their own nature drop off, it's because those defilements are in the nature of mind. So by their own nature, we're saying, we're gathering that all up and saying that's part of mind. So we don't, over here, this stuff goes out and we do that. No, it's all the nature. It is why the ancients said there was a sutra that said that the Buddhas use the defilements of the of sentient beings to practice. The Buddhas used the defilements of sentient beings to practice. So it's a very interesting thing here because we're talking about Buddha nature. So this Buddha nature that we're talking about is not a thing, it's not a concept. So the masters are very careful in the manner in which they respond to this. So we're very careful so we don't say that, oh, that this is a defilement or not a defilement. He just says that by their nature, they fall off. And why is it by their nature? Because that defilement is not other than part of mind and the Buddha nature. The Buddha nature encompasses everything. It just doesn't encompass your idea of an individual self or a soul. It is mind. So then the monk says, because he didn't understand what he said, and he said, do you mean that we shouldn't cut them off? So that we shouldn't cut off our defilements? And and you can see sometimes people, some people who are intellectuals or smart alecks will go, Gilbert said you don't have to cut off defilements. He did? Well, that's wrong. Well, it's taking it completely out of context as to what was being said. You know, by their own nature, they fall off. But because people want to cause problems or whatever, or they misunderstand it. So you have to be very careful. Don't create any kind of a karma of your own with this. So then Matsu said, cutting off defilements is called a second vehicle. So cutting off defilements is called a second vehicle. What do you think he means by this? Cutting off defilements is called a second vehicle. Anybody?
Let me take skin, try again. Because there's still discrimination. That means they are not looking at their own mind. They're still using concepts and discrimination. So there's something to cut off, something pure to get. So there's still discrimination. That's why there's a second vehicle. They are not directly going to the mind.
What is the first vehicle?
Go directly to the mind. That means things that come
from
mind. All this discrimination come from mind, return to mind. So we only focus on the mind itself, the source of all the discriminations.
So the first vehicle is just mind. That yes. Buddha is the mind. And so when we rely on that in our cultivation of wisdom, then this is the first vehicle. To try to control our actions is a second vehicle, which said, oh, I don't want to drink anymore. I don't want to take drugs anymore. You know, I don't want to do this. I don't want whatever it is you're trying to stop. You know, that's the second one. It's a lower level of practice. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't do that, but that just comes naturally when one is applying the first vehicle, which is just this mind. Okay, so we continue on. So he said, when defilements do not arise, this is called nirvana. One monk asked, how does one sit in meditation and observe purity? So what would you answer if somebody asked you, how do you sit in meditation and observe purity? What would you say to them?
Don't make purity.
So anybody else? Don't let them hog up all the time here. I'm sure there's very, very good practitioners in Singapore, right? And I saw your abbot here, so you have to practice well and show them what you've learned. So if they say there being neither pollution nor, I'm giving you the answer now. Matsu says, there being neither pollution nor purity, why do you need to assume a posture of observing purity? This is a conception. This is a discrimination. When we have a state in mind of upeka, of equanimity, we do not do that. We're clear about that. And so this is something that's important. So here, in terms of what we're doing, we're looking at this, we're aware of the Sanika doctrine, that there is no transmigration of souls from one life to another. We have to try to understand this, you know, and then see how this is. And we say, well, how did you come up and you were born this way, or you're born a pig or whatever, you know, in the next lifetime. But in actuality, then that is why Master Ling Chi said that he searched for 12 years and could not find even a piece of karma there, because he's going directly to mind only, to this idea of the justice mind, the ekayana. And when we talk about ekayana and justice mind, it's very easy for us to deify it, to make it like, oh, that's this big Buddha God, but that's really bad. And to say that there's all of these bodhisattvas all of the bodhisattvas, the Buddhas, the very mind that runs through you is not different from them. And those, you could say, are constructs of something that is undefinable. We put that in our mind as to how we think that they appear, you know, and you would think that, you know, when we see the Buddha, that the Buddha would have a change of clothes after 2,500 years. And what I'm doing is not trying to shock you, as to make you look at not the appearance, but mind itself, not an entity, but mind. This is something you have to let go of your conceptualization to do. This is not easy, but I'm taking you through this to kind of essentially plant some seeds and water it, so that you can begin to contemplate this, and then to see if you can do this. This is the shortcut to doing that. And you see that doesn't mean that you give up all your practice and of morality. Morality is necessary, you know, with that, and you know, your wisdom and your practice. But it's the practice is wisdom, and wisdom is the practice, and the ultimate result is compassion, as we'll see in just a moment. I'm trying to bide my time here. Easy. So let me read a little bit of an article about no self, Dogen, the Seneca doctrine, and Western views of souls. And this was just an opening part of it. And it said, I'm kind of taking you right in the middle of it. It says, especially the Theravadan line of Buddhism has developed a counterintuitive picture of what it is to be a human person. There is suffering, but there is no self who suffers. The most outstanding philosopher of Mahayana Buddhism, Nagarjuna, and that was from the 3rd century, 150 to 250 CE, introduced a more convincing interpretation when he said that according to the Buddha, the self or soul does not exist. So he's saying, so Nagarjuna said the self or soul does not exist according to the Buddha. So where did he get that? This interpretation, too, is no less than the Theravadan doctrine can refer to the early epoch of the Buddhism. In the Pali Sutras, a monk named Vakagata asked the Buddha, is there self? What do you know what the Buddha replied? And they asked him outright, is there self? Hey, Buddha, is there self? What did he say? Anybody know? Nobody. What would you say? You be the Buddha now. We're even, you know, before you were Matsu, now you're up to the Buddha. And it's so the stakes are higher because everybody's going to rely on what you're going to be saying for the next 2,500 years or more. So what are you going to say? Is there self? Now, if he says there's self, then that means that the Seneca doctrine holds true. If he says that there's no self, then can that be consistent with Mahayana and Buddha nature? Nobody know? The Buddha gave no response. Then Vachagata asked, is there no self? So he turned it around and said, is there no self? Then, so is there self? And he didn't say anything. So then he wants to come from the other side. So what do you think? You're the Buddha. If you say, no, there's no self, it's the same thing as asking if there's self. So what do you think you did? Again, the Buddha was silent. So this is an important clue to you. It's not in the words and the phrases. You have to feel this. You have to feel this in the heart mind. You have to feel, what is the Buddha saying here? So this is what we do when we're investigating mind, cultivating wisdom. We're looking into this. We're trying to see how does this all fit together? And let me see if there's anything more I could add here. Okay, so I'll move on to the next part. Now it gets a little thicker, but very interesting, very interesting. And we're going to explore a little bit of the Buddha Nature treatise. This is one that one of my students, now a senior student, I imagine, he's been around long enough, Eon, really took an interest in. And in the sutra, talking about Buddha nature, this is now, we've already studied all these other schools all through Madhyamika and Yogacara and the Abhidharma, and now we're getting into the Tathagata Garbha Sutras and these treatises that discuss Buddha nature. What is Buddha nature? So we're now beyond the idea of sunyata, and we're in the perfection of the understanding of sunyata, this Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, this very highest perfected wisdom, to the point that there's no further wisdom, because Buddha nature is evident in the present moment. And so it's functioning on a totally different level. It's no longer on a spatial temporal level. It is, meaning space or time. It's functioning as mind, not as an entity. And this is very, very important here. So let's see where we go. So it says, in arguing for an understanding of Buddha nature as an active part of my task, and she's referring, the author Sally B. Field is referring to trying to describe this Buddha nature as active part of my task must be to demonstrate that the Buddha nature is not a substantive self or mind of any kind, nor any other kind of thing or entity. So right away, she's starting from this viewpoint, and she has it correct that it is not a thing. It's not a concept. The mind is not a separate mind from your quote unquote discriminatory mind. It is the whole enchilada. I don't know what Singapore dish would be, or I'd use that. But in any case, it comprises everything that's there. And so being that it comprises everything, what is there to call that is not mine? And how could we call it? By differentiating? And who would be there to call it? If I am in mind, you are in mind, all appearances are in mind, is there anything outside of it? No. So then she continues, and she says, many passages of the Buddha Nature Treatise demonstrate this by using a term that sounds as if it represents an entity, but then proceeding to de-reify the term and demonstrate an active or functional meaning for it. Now, you now know that you're in a very scholarly article, because all of a sudden she stopped speaking English. But this is important, and I'm going to take you through the words because it's important. The first word that came up that was very interesting was this word here, de-reify. So what she's saying is that all of this stuff is talking about the Buddha nature, how it functions and everything. But in order to do that, to reify means to say, this is something, this is this, you know. If I see something and I say, oh, this is a rubber ball, you know, this is, you know, round, it's a scarlet color or whatever. And we de-reify it and we say, actually, it's fundamentally empty. It has no source. It's impermanent. We only call it that because of causes and conditions, but those causes and conditions are something that are temporary. Even the one that perceived to be the knower and have this knowledge is temporary, but mind itself need not call it anything. It just is in its suchness. So this is de-reifying it, saying that what it is, without conceptually calling it a ball or not calling it a ball. It just sees it as the suchness of mind or thusness of mind, the tathagata. And so when we see things in this way, then we understand the world is this way. Everywhere you look, anything you think about, anything you've done, anything you will do, it's all from mind. It's all connected. That was very simple from the very first lesson of the Buddha in the 12 Nidanas, the dependent origination. So when we look at things, we see it in this way. He tried that, and that really didn't work too well, because people weren't ready for it at that point. So then he just taught the Four Noble Truths and suffering and whatever. But the Mahayanas were looking at it and saying, these are illusory beings, but nevertheless, they're part of Buddha nature. So we need to assist it, even though knowing and de-reifying them and saying, I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings of illusory nature. And when you look at the liturgy, the Chang liturgy, it talks about, there's one part that says, I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings of self-nature. I vow to cut off endless vexations of self-nature. I vow to practice limitless approach to Dharma of self-nature. I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood of self-nature. That's pointing to it. There's two parts. The first one doesn't have self-nature, and the second one does. And I remember talking to some monastics that wanted to trim the liturgy for their evening service. And they said, what do you think if we cut this part out? And I said, don't do that. And they go, what? I said, this is representing the Tathagata Garbha. This is showing self-nature of mind, that all of these things, all of these beings, everything belongs to mind. And so it's like you're saying something, I vow to do these sentient beings without ever de-reifying the fact that they are not existent. It is just mind. So when we de-reify, what we're doing is we're saying these things all belong to mind. We don't have to negate them. We don't have to say no self or self. We don't have to do that. We just have to not give them a separate existence apart from mind. Mind knows. Mind knows you, but you don't know mind. You cannot know mind, but mind knows you. So you have to turn the mind's eye inward. So you start using the perception of mind and not the perception of a samsaric existence of form, sensation, perception, volition, and consciousness. All of that is constructs. When we break that down, then we're able to do that, to do it in the right way. And I have just a little bit of time. This part's going to be a little bit deeper, but I wanted to try to. I'm not going to get there. It's. I would just leave you. I just don't have enough time to get to the next part, but I really want to talk about that next week in terms of this, in terms of that it says the Buddha nature, the own nature of the Buddha, in Chinese, Sheng. Hopefully I didn't butcher that. If somebody knows it in Chinese, my pronunciation is wrong, please say it. Sheng, meaning your own nature, the own nature. of the Buddha nature is characterized by three traits. One, it possesses the power like a wish-fulfilling Mani jewel. The second one is it's characterized by non-differentiation in the sense that ordinary persons, sages, and Buddhas are essentially all alike insofar as the nature of the mind, and that each are pure and replete with Buddha virtues, differing only on their stage of realization. You have the Buddha mind, you just haven't realized it, you haven't awakened to it. So it is not something that you go and you seek outside of yourself. You just have to use this mind in the proper way. That's why in the investigation is so important, because investigating, you will find you already have it. There's nothing that is missing. When you came out of the factory, you already had it. It's all there. When was the when you come out of the factory? Who the heck knows when this all started? Beginningless time. And so then the third one is in all of this, there is no substantive self or mind. This is the third one, very important for today's lesson. There's no substantive self or mind, despite the use of own nature language. That's where this Buddha nature treatise was reifying and saying, this is the nature of mind, but we cannot call it a thing. And so it said, and here comes the payoff. It's going to come out in a moment. And it says that and the third one is, it is characterized by the nutrient quality of compassion for all. So it grants all wishes, but not in a Nietzschean way, but in a way in which it's saying, after a while, you don't need any of this, because if you have mind, you have no cravings, desires, or discriminations. So it's a wish-fulfilling gem, this mind. And it doesn't differentiate. Everything is within the Buddha mind. And then the third one, which is the culmination of all of this, of investigating mind and cultivating wisdom, is that it is expressed in compassion. And so for all, and this is the nutrient quality of it, is what the mind feeds to the mind, is this quality of compassion. So it says, and let me finish. It says, in all of this, there is no substantive self or mind, despite the use of the term. The first trait portrays the one aspect of the dynamic character of the Buddha nature, its tendency to move towards its own self-realization. This is not to be understood as a characteristic of Buddha nature, as an entity possesses. The Buddha nature has this tendency towards self-realization as a function of it, of its origination, its own nature. It will tend to move towards self-realization. And so this is what the Buddha brings into the samsaric world, is this tune that says, that awakens people. And so when we understand that, then we see the awakening, then those that awaken are no longer those, it's mind. And they realize that. They realize all of those who are not awakened are also mind. They just need to be nudged. And it is the compassion of the mind that brings about this interest in nudging the people to awaken. Just like I'm trying to do with you today. Hopefully I didn't put you to sleep, but you might be a little closer to awakening. Some of you from the East Coast in the United States may be getting more sleep here. But in any case, this is kind of where we're at. And because they're talking about one last part, it says, likewise, the third characteristic representing action, that is the Buddha nature, is in this case compassionate action. And this is very important. And this, when we get to Samantabhadra as a Pushan Pusa, then we begin to understand this is an aspect of the Buddha nature, and that's what Bushen Pusa represents, is this active, dynamic part of mind that has an interest, the karuna in the suffering of others. So I hope this helps you. It may be something that might be a big bite full, but I think it's something good. It doesn't hurt you every once in a while to extend your practice a little further than let's say your comfort zone. I think that's helpful, and hopefully it will tantalize you enough to begin to do some of your own investigation. Okay, so that's it for today, and then we'll take questions and comments.
So for all participants on Zoom, if you have a question, please raise your hand or type your question in the chat room. For participants on Facebook Live, please type your question in the comment section in Facebook Live, and our volunteers will port it over to the Zoom room. So can we have our first question? You may click on the raise hand, or you can raise hand on your screen and unmute yourself. All right, Chinlun Pusa has a question.
Hi, Gilbert. Thanks for the explanation. Omitofo. Yeah, I thought that I just kick off with a question from my experience today, which is very recent. As I woke up, I can sense a bit of defilement in my mind. And I was thinking that where does it come from? Given that I have been working from home and meditated quite a bit. So I kind of reminded myself, okay, ignore it and get into my practice and sit on the cushion and start practicing. The sitting wasn't very good, but I'm just thinking, of what you have taught in terms of relating to my earlier experience. How do I, do the shortcut and look directly into the mind?
Very good question. The thing is, it's just like what I was saying about the young boy that said, I want to know how you do it. That's important. So the practice is one that we do all day long, not just simply sitting on a cushion. The cushion is a controlled environment, and where we do not have a lot of problems going on. We don't have to attend to questions at work or cleaning up or doing whatever we have to do or anything. We just simply are sitting. And so we give the body and the mind nothing but the method to concentrate on. So at that point, it enables the mind to be able to discern when things are arising within it. But we don't do anything with those things. We just realize that all of those things are part of mind. We do not have to punish ourselves for having discriminations. We just have to illuminate from where they come. And we don't have to try to remove them from the mind. The illumination is the process of removing any kind of discriminatory thoughts from the mind. Shifu, he used to use the example of someone who had walked through a river and had gotten leeches on their body. I don't know what the term is in Chinese, but they're the bugs that suck your blood. And he said that you could just pull the leeches off your body, but if you did, then the head would still stick in there, and that's not a very good way of doing it. But if you poured salt all over your body, then the leeches by their nature would fall off because the environment is not suitable for them. So they will, by their nature, just fall off. Likewise, when we practice, we don't have to pull off our individual discriminations. When we illuminate them, this is like putting salt on them. And so we create an unfavorable environment for them to go. We know the most important aspect of mind is pratika samappada. Causes and conditions never fail. So we use that in everything that we do. we apply it, pratika samapada, to everything that we see. So when we get up and you have a discriminatory thought, pratika samapada, this is arising habitually because you've had these kinds of discriminations in the past. So as a result of that, the discriminations will be there, and so you come up again. But when you illuminate it, you give them no fertile ground to grow on. You give it nothing to think about. It is, again, just like shining a light in the kitchen or turning on the kitchen light and then seeing the mouse scatter or the mice scatter because you've now created an unwholesome environment for them. They don't want to be in the light. So by their nature, they'll just dissipate. Same thing with whatever you do. Anything in this way, from when you practice, you have to see very, very clearly how the practice works. And in your daily life, you do the same thing. So you look at everything and you're mindful in the present moment. If I say this, this and this will happen. If I say this, this will. If I don't say this, and so you begin to use the mind in the proper way. After a while, what happens is that because you don't have so many obstructions in your mind is actually capable of processing an incredible amount of data instantaneously. But because we think sequentially, it moves along like a slow train. But the mind is capable of making calculations, in the beginning, maybe 3 simultaneously, maybe 100 later on, that the mind is capable of looking at all the possibilities that will happen in the next moment from all the things that are there, pulling in the input of this person's predestined type of personality or what they're doing and all the situations. And then it makes a decision out of wisdom. So the mind, it is not that the mind is slowed down, the mind is sped up, the environment is slowed down. And the mind moves at lightning pace. You cannot do that with a cogitating mind. The only way you can do that is with a mind of the mind's own perception. And it is capable of making those kinds of instant decisions in the present moment. The more you hold on to your discriminations and obstructions and vexations, the slower the mind gets, the less wisdom that's there. When we let go of that, the wisdom speeds the mind up into a very, very high level of performance. So this is how you practice. Okay.
Next question, we invite Angela Ho to ask a question.
Amitabha, Shifu. Yeah. Yeah, regarding the last part of your discourse where you talked about the 3 characteristics of Tathagata Garbha, I was sort of expecting you to mention one of the characteristics as knowing, and I was surprised that it wasn't mentioned. So I was wondering if you could speak about it, because I thought, or maybe it's so obvious, right? Or maybe it's so innate that we don't need to mention it, that I thought the essence of the Tathagata Garbha is knowing. Yeah, thank you.
The essence of the Tathagata Garbha, and Tathagata Garbha is the Buddha womb. And let me explain that to the people first before we get to the next part. Is the term Tathagata and Tathagata. One means thus come one, and the other one is thus gone one. So it's very interesting. And then when we add Garbha to the end, we talk about the womb. Some people believe that when we talk about Tathagata Garbha, it means the potentiality of becoming a Buddha, and that we all have this ability to do that. I do not believe it in that way. I believe it to be that everything comes from mind, and the mind is the womb of all appearances. So when we have this, it is is something that isn't necessarily the a knowing as in a consciousness. It is the reason that they use the word thusness or suchness, because it's beyond knowing, it's beyond understanding. It is just simply is. And so you put down the idea of knowing, because when we say to know, it would mean that oh, I know this. But it's in, like, say, oh, I know Angela. No, but there's no duality there. There's no duality to say, even so it's beyond wisdom, beyond knowing, beyond understanding. It just is mind. And so mind knows that without having to say knowing at all. So there at that point, there isn't any knowing, because it is everything that arises in mind is mind. And so it doesn't have to keep saying, well, I know that, you know. So you have an interview with the Buddha and they say, well, you know, everything is all together. Well, I know that. It would, that's why we don't get there. We use the words thusness and suchness. So this knowing that you're referring to, Angela, is the perception of mind itself. And in the perception of mind, it does not have the same spatio-temporal application that's in the consciousness from the samsaric viewpoint. It is an awareness without any kind of duality or suggestion of any kind of a knowing, because it is presupposed. And that's why the Buddha Nature treatise was talking about this de-reification, so that one doesn't think that it has this nature of an entity of any kind. Even if it was a supreme entity, it doesn't have that kind of a nature. So the knowing that we're talking about here is a different kind of knowing. And so if the way in which you would use it would be using it such as thusness or suchness of mind. And if you look at it from this way, it'll fit. Any follow-up? You okay? Okay, we have Sim Ju Yang.
Follow up Chin Lun's question. Because okay, like you say, if we feel that there's a discrimination, we can shine our lights back to eliminate where does it come from. So but during meditation, sometimes this kind of how to say, discriminating thoughts are rather stubborn. Because it feels like, oh, I seem to know this thing and that. I mean, there's still some kind of thinking down there. But if I try to just to know it, there's still a kind of like, there's still feels like something still, there's still something knowing about it. So how do you get, is there a method to get past, to look more, like you say, direct to the mind itself?
You just have to be still. When you're using your meditation, do not you're not on a train looking out the window watching the scenery go by. You are just simply resting the mind in the present moment. We have to get used to not craving any kind of a visual or mental activity in the mind. We panic because the illusory self wants to continue. And the ancient master said, we must sever, cut off the mind that desires continuation. It is much easier for you to not look at anything, to not try to exclude anything, just simply be in the present moment. No matter what happens around you, all of those appearances, you just illuminate them without any kind of a mental attachment to them. They are arising in mind perfectly in accordance with Pratika Samapada. You put them there, so of course they're going to come up. Doesn't mean that they're important anymore. It's just that they're the residue, like an echo of what you have done before. If for instance, someone gets angry, and then they wake up, and all of a sudden that emotion is there. A discriminating emotion is there. Why? Because it was put there before. It's just coming back up like an echo. We let it go. And when we let it go, then the mind is back to just resting in this present moment. So take no interest in anything that's appearing at all, whether it was good or bad, especially if it's good, because it'll really mess you up. Then you'll have all sorts of different kinds of spirits coming around you to tempt you with this and that, and you don't want that. So you're better off just sitting, staying with your method, and resting. That's the practice. Your practice is not trying to be the janitor that's going to sweep out the whole gymnasium. You don't have to do that. You just have to just sit. All of those things will disappear on their own. So we have to know how to practice in the right way, how to sit in the right way. Be patient, and don't look for any kind of mental activity. The mind really wants to go that way just simply because it feels like it needs that in order to maintain its existence. But it's just the illusory self, and in its last gasp, trying to get you off of that, so because of the fear it has, that what happens after that. So just hang in there with the method. Just become very impeccable with the method. Don't ever think about what is arising other than if it's the method. If it's not the method, just let it illuminate whatever's there and let it go. Okay?
Thank you, Gilbert.
Great. You're welcome. Next question. Sheng.
Thank you, Teacher Gilbert. Teacher, thank you. I have this question. I've been practicing meditation for a while, many years. I found that the most difficult mind activity is when we do activities. The gross mind I can observe, but the very fine activities, the mind activities, how do we observe it through our daily life? Thank you.
Oh. It's very interesting because we often talk about subtle wisdom. And so she is coming from a point of view where she's been working on her practice and now settled down and has, let's say, been able to corral what's called the gross sensations, the harder sensations, the ones that are rougher. But now it's more subtle. So in your daily practice or when you're meditating, just simply be aware. Be aware of everything that's arising without discrimination. Know that whatever's arising arises due to Pratika Samapada, causes and conditions never fail. So it's appearing there, you know that it's there, and then you become being aware of something, knowing that it's causes, then enables you to prepare for the conditions. And then you choose to guide the environment into a better condition. So wherever you're at and whatever you're doing, you look and say, okay, I look at a messy room, and you say, I choose to clean this room up. So you do the things necessary to do that. And then lo and behold, other people in your household wants to clean it too, or they don't want to do the things that make it messy. And So in terms of this, we practice in this way. You use the 4 practices of having wholesome thoughts and also bringing forth wholesome thoughts into mind, and not allowing unwholesome thoughts to stay in the mind, and not bringing the causes to allow unwholesome thoughts to come into the mind. So it becomes, this 4 practices become very, very subtle, very, very soft. And it leads to this incredible wisdom that you use every moment of the day. It starts with the awareness in the present moment, and then you are aware of what is arising. As I mentioned before, to know the arising mind is the non-arising mind. There's where you should rest the mind, is in the non-arising mind. Okay?
Thank you.
Still time for question.
Then I'll ask a question. Just now in your presentation of the academic paper, there is this definition of the Buddha nature mind that it tends towards self-realization. So what have I been doing that I'm still not realized, and I'm feeling that it's a very, very far away place to get to?
You're practicing your consciousness. And that's the difference. So when you don't practice your consciousness and you practice mind, it makes the difference. That's why I'm taking the time in this class to present it in a different way than you probably heard it before, which is right view. So you need to investigate mind. And when you see it, and then you have faith. And so the faith is that you have faith in the Buddha mind, faith in the Dharma, and faith in yourself that you can do this, and it will work. But do not approach it as if you are putting anything down or picking anything up. The Buddha mind is very subtle, and you don't have to squeeze it to try to get something or to subdue the mind. We just simply have to illuminate the mind. And the more you illuminate, the more the mind will settle on its own. And so just be patient. Be patient. Have faith that it will work. But again, the shortcut is just this mind, that you know that this mind, there's no mind that you seek. What this mind that's listening to me right now is the Buddha mind. So you have it. And so you, it's kind of like the end of the Wizard of Oz, and where the wizard's giving everybody things they already had, and so it's that way. You already have courage, you have a heart, you have a brain. But you have to know how to use them in the right way. And if you can do that, then it works very, very well. Okay. Just have faith. You will get there. Again, it's running into well-known advisors and then listening to them and understanding that there's something there that they're saying, and maybe it's what you don't understand that's the most important at this point, rather than what you understand. Sometimes it's very easy for us to put into our book of knowledge things that we understand. And what good is that? I don't come here to tell you to do that. What I tell you to do is the true and proper understanding is how to practice well and in the present moment. And if you do that, cause and conditions will not fail. You will progress, but you have to really dig in and do it. But there's none of you that aren't capable of doing that. You're all very, very capable of practicing and listening. You have the good fortune to listen to right view. So that's something. And then you just put in and tell me if it honestly practicing, sincerely practicing, it doesn't work. I would not be able to believe that. If you sincerely practice, you will make progress. I promise you that. You know, if I'm wrong about that, then after I die, I have to go to a Vicky hell. They can cut my tongue out every day. Honestly, I believe in those things, so I'm not making that as an idle threat. There's not one of you that's not capable of doing that, you know, of practicing. So don't make me a liar, okay? Now the burden is on you. I gotta get there because I don't want Gilbert to go to Vicky hell. Okay. Okay, any last one? All right. What I'm trying to do with these lectures is give you a totally different look than what you were doing from before. A look of the Dharma from the idea of investigating mind and looking at that. We're talking about the very principles of Mahayana. And we're talking about them, and what I'm exposing you to is very high level stuff. Sometimes it's not so easy to talk about them. Even the question that Angela talked to me or asked me is a very kind of a high level question. So we're dealing with things from a much more profound level, but you're all able to hang in there with me, and that's something. Don't think that you have to understand 100% of what I'm saying right now. It's okay. Be patient. In due time, things will come to you. Okay, and we still have I think a couple more classes, and you know, next week I don't even know what I'm going to present, but it'll be tied into all of this and add on to all of this. And it's kind of like when we start with all of this, then when we go back to the ancient masters, the Chan masters, you go, wow, there it is. That's all they were saying. The same thing that was happening, what Gilbert was saying and laying out, is what these Chan masters have been saying for all these hundreds of years. So I invite you to keep going with this, because each class will pay off more and more. Okay? Amitofo.
Can we invite you to lead us in a dedication of merit?
Sure, that's fine. So we put our minds and hearts together, that we come to a single resolution to awaken and to remove the suffering from the countless worlds. And we bring all sentient beings to liberation everywhere. Amitofo. Thank you all.
Let us all bow to Gilbert for his Dharma talk today. Amitofo.
Amitofo.
Thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week at the same time. Thank you all. Thanks, Gilbert.
Good to see you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Gilbert.
Please
You're
rest
welcome.
well and have a good weekend.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Ian, Michael, you can go to sleep now. And whoever's on the West Coast or East Coast. Sue, too.
Amitofo.
Amitofo, take care. Thank you for hosting the group. I will be leaving now. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Gilbert. Bye.
Bye-bye, Esther.